Welcome back to Electric Fantastic. When you see this clip from Fully Charged, you will be totally convinced that electric cars are the future. In fact, electric cars are fantastic.
So I'm here outside the main entrance to Everything Electric Sydney. We've had an amazing show here. One of the questions that occasionally comes up at events like this is how long will these fancy electric cars last? And I'm here next to something most of you will recognise. This is a Tesla Model S made in 2018, but it's not just any old Tesla Model S. This one is a bit special.
Like Fully Charged? You'll love our fun-packed Everything Electric expos around the world. Come and join us in Harrogate, Farnborough and Vancouver. Remember, energy and transport professionals go for free.
And I'm joined today by Nigel Reynard. Nigel, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting
I just
us.
want to get the basic stats of this car. So tell us how far it's gone in its total life so far.
Okay, so far it's done 707,000 kilometres.
707,000 kilometres, and we just managed to work that out, that isn't quite to the moon and back, but it's to the moon and you're re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. So it's quite a long way. And now one of the questions is always about the batteries. And so is this the original battery that the car came with when you got it?
Luckily it's not. So it has an 8-year infinite kilometre warranty, which I'm certainly testing out.
You did definitely test that.
And so I was hoping that I wouldn't get to 8 years and 2 months and the battery would fail, but what actually happened is I had an error code on the battery at 666,000 kilometres.
So the original battery did 600, I've got to underline this, forgive me, 666,000 kilometres, which is about 500,000 miles.
Yeah, I was
roughly.
actually coming back from Brisbane with a client and it hit 666,666, so even sixes.
That is slightly worrying in a way.
Yeah, and I had an error message, and so the error message was indicating reduced charging ability.
Right.
And so I checked.
So the battery, the car didn't stop, didn't break down, it was still working.
No, what was happening with the battery is I was getting reduced power at very low kilometres. So when I was around 40, 50 kilometres, it was indicating like there was something wrong with the cells.
Right.
So when I checked that in with service, they gave me the option. They had just announced battery upgrades to a 90 kilowatt, and I was very interested in that. And as it was over $20,000, I ummed and ahed, and then looked at it in the app, and I said, what about a warranty battery? And you actually receive a refurbished battery in a warranty unit. And I came back several days later and they had upgraded to a brand new pack.
Wow.
And I guess they didn't have any refurbished packs with high kilometres. And it was really great.
And then since that's happened then, so for the last couple 100,000 kilometres you've done in it, it's like it's a new, it's full range and all
this
that
was
stuff.
only a few months ago, so I've done 40,000 Ks.
Right,
so
with the new one.
Yeah, I did 800 Ks today coming down here.
Yes.
So generally about 500-600 kilometres a day.
Right.
Yeah. So
wow. So then, what the intriguing things with that then is, what's your regular charging pattern? Are you using?
Not following anything really in particular. We have free energy during the middle of the day at our home, so we have a couple of Model Ys, and so we generally try and use the one car that's full in the morning, have a car on the free charging, and then we do swapping of cars.
And when you say free charging, it's presumably your own solar that's doing this?
No, it's actually with Origin. They have a 360 plan, so if you have an EV registered at the address, you can have free. So from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. every day, we have 2 fast chargers and we just swap cars. And then you get a clean car rather than picking people up in a car that you quickly have to wipe over.
Yes, yeah.
But I generally do fast charging, DC charging, the Tesla network.
So this would have been charged with fast charging regularly?
Yeah. Every day, several times a day.
Right.
And to 100%. So, and then running it down very low. So I haven't followed any particular practice. I've been kind of avoiding the internet and all of the misinformation, and I've just been out there doing it.
You're doing your job.
And it's been, it's become a fun thing because lots of clients that are in the car, you're driving along and they start parroting things they've heard, and they say things like, oh, you wouldn't want to drive around Australia in this. And I say, oh, actually, there's a guy at the moment from Western Australia.
It's always, isn't it?
And Harold's just driven around in 10 days. And they go, oh, but it wasn't in a Tesla, was it? And yes, it was. So it's just improving the infrastructure constantly. And so the charging is not something I think too much about.
Right.
People do discuss it, but it's not my focus.
No, but then presumably there's other things. And what about the rest of the car? I mean, aside from the battery, it's a car that's done a lot of miles. So if you had to replace other things,
I think I just booked my 5th service.
Right.
So originally I was around 200,000 kilometres, and I was wondering why there was no service. And things like the brake pads, my brake pads were changed at 460,000 kilometres, and they weren't actually changed because they were making any noise. They were changed because they were doing an air conditioning compressor at Tesla. And I said, "Oh, can you look at the brakes?" And they're like, "Oh, you may as well do the brakes now."
Right.
And so things.
Sorry to repeat, because people go on and on about how the brakes.
460,000 kilometres, and they did the front pads and the discs, which they do generally on cars these days. They do them both at the same time.
Yeah.
But
those pads have lasted a hell of a lot longer than they would on a similar sized combustion car would have got through pads in less than half of that.
Well, I've always driven a lot, and so my partner actually, Louise, started the business, and she's had a couple of Mazdas, and they've hit 300,000 Ks, and you go to the dealership and they offer you $2,000 for your $50,000 car.
Right.
So I've been through a lot of vehicles, not in the business, but so to have a car where you have minimal moving parts, and I think I learnt that from looking at a company in California, Tesla.
Yes.
And my mum used to live in California, and so I was very interested in Tesla, and I thought, oh, well, I'll buy a Tesla.
Yeah.
It was very hard to afford the Tesla.
Yes. In Australia, definitely. This is definitely not a cheap car.
No incentives back then. A lot of luxury car tax and stamp duty and all of that, but it's paid off. And the most rewarding thing about driving people in the car is the conversations, because you don't want to come across and say, oh, your nice Mercedes or your vehicle that they love is a bad choice, but you just want to say this car has minimal moving parts.
Yeah.
This is my experience, and there's charging here, and most of the people that get them charge at home. So the whole conversations that I hear daily are not my experience.
Yes.
And I'm doing these insane kilometres each week.
It's incredible. It's incredible. So, thank you so much for driving it down and bringing it here today. It's such a it's such a just, you don't have to argue about it. It's just, this is a car, this is how far it's done. It's, they last longer, they go further. Kind of end of conversation, really, isn't it?
Thank you for the opportunity and for the parking in Sydney.
Yeah,
you don't get any better than this.
We've supplied you with easy parking. Thank you so much, Nigel.
You're
really
welcome.
Good to meet you.
Thank you very much.